John, I'm super excited to be having this conversation with you, Big Daddy. So, why don't you start off by sharing a little bit with everyone listening how you and Karen found yourselves on this journey?
Okay. Karen and I had been trying and hoping to have a baby for a very long time. I would say more years than I can count or remember. Um, and we actually did get pregnant once. Karen was pregnant, and we tragically lost that pregnancy uh, pretty late into her term then. And so that was devastating, of course. And that was a big marker in our lives in terms of having to move through that pain. And I don't want to dwell on that, but that was definitely a significant place in our journey. And following that experience, we continued to try to get pregnant, and just weren't successful for quite a few years. And so, I should have talked to Karen and tried to verify the details of how she found you, because I can't remember exactly. But
It was magic, John. It was
yeah,
kismet.
let's just leave it at that. Okay. It was through fate, serendipity, whatever you want to call it. Um, Karen found you, Roseanne, and I vividly remember her first phone call with you. Um, and I vividly remember her asking me about paying the fee for your service. And I remember my reaction, which was a little bit shocked because I hadn't really mentally prepared for it. But I'll tell you one thing: in that call, when she decided to do it, and you kind of gave her a little bit of a ultimatum, almost like a big sisterly kind of thing, okay, you got to decide now. Are you doing it, or are we going to have to go through this process again? And I saw a shift in her from that moment. When she made that decision to work with you, I also saw in her, in hindsight, I'm saying, I saw her commit in a new way.
Wow. That is extremely observant of you. This is interesting because a lot of men can sometimes, when they watch their woman make a decision and when they see that shift, it can be frightening, but it doesn't sound like you were scared.
I wouldn't call it fear. No. I mean, to be honest, the price tag definitely made me take notice, but it wasn't a hard decision because I knew even before she started working with you that it was going to be worth it.
So let's back up the bus a little bit, because
Okay.
for a lot of women, when they're struggling in this area, particularly because it's so sensitive, it speaks to so many aspects of who we are as women, as mothers to be, that asking for help like this and making that kind of investment is the first time a woman is actually in a very clear and distinct way, not tied to education, not tied to business, not tied to anything like we traditionally consider socially acceptable, but she is making an investment in a vision that has not materialized yet. And it is a huge leap. It's extraordinary that number one, that she made that decision, but two, that you backed her play. So, what made you back that? Because you could have easily said, "Oh my gosh, I don't see my woman investing money like this on anything else." Like, why didn't you do that?
Well, because so the first word that comes to mind is desperation, but that has a real negative connotation. And it also, I mean, there's a lot of vulnerability in using that word desperation. But in that moment of making that decision, I saw that desperation in her, and I could see it transforming to empowerment.
That's
And
huge.
yeah, it is. And I mean, of course, in the moment, if I had talked to you then, I wouldn't have been able to put it into those words, Roseanne. But I'm saying now, 4 years later, more than 4 years at this point, um, I can see that was the shift that was taking place, and I feel that I would have had so much more to lose by not supporting her in that than I would have had to say, "Hey, let's do this." I mean, you can always any amount of money you can always make back. You know, money is what it is. It's kind of fleeting in a way. I mean, it's important. It's a great tool, but you only get the benefit of it if you use it as a tool. So, like in terms of deciding to do it, I mean, I don't mean to like pivot on the whole money thing, but
No,
like,
this is huge, John. Please do. Please do, because not a lot of people have access to this understanding. Because the first thing that they'll do is they'll see a price tag and run away. Like, "Oh shit, I just dodged a bullet." But what you're hitting on here is, did you really? Did you seize the opportunity to create something different?
right, right. Yeah. I just felt, I mean, I saw in her eyes something that said, this is important and this is good and let's go for it. And honestly, I was just as invested in it as she was emotionally and, in my soul. I wanted it just as much as she did. But as you know, there's a kind of emotional detachment and a little bit of a wall that we can tend to put up as men. And then also, it's a process that's not happening biologically in our bodies in the way that it's happening in the mother. And so our sense of our sense of deep involvement sometimes it comes from a different place. uh,
Wow. You're exactly right. The point that you just made is a really good one, and I want to expand on it. Is this idea that, okay, my the woman in my life is having this experience. You were clearly devastated by the loss as well. That is going to feel different to you on many many levels. Karen's having her experience, you're having yours, but you're also watching your woman go through this intense period in her life, but you're going through it too. So what were some of your thoughts? Like, how did you deal with what was going on for you?
yeah, I mean, honestly, I was suppressing a lot at the time. I'm sure I had lots of thoughts, but looking back on it, I think there was a lot of fear.
Fear of
Uh,
what?
Fear of being childless, fear of trying something and having it not work, fear of feeling like I wasn't good enough to do my part. um, in general, fear that our prayers and hopes and dreams might not come to fruition.
What do you think was the biggest toll that that took on you and ultimately in your relationship?
I mean, it was very hard on me at the time. I had overall my stress. Uh, I was fighting depression, um, sort of lack of focus and lack of clarity in my ambitions. And I'll confess, these are issues in my own personal life and psychology that I still am dealing with and working through, but in the way that they were connected to wanting to be a parent, um, there's a huge healing process that has happened, and now, I mean, I feel like my whole life has really turned around, especially as my
Mm,
child grows and she's communicating. And I mean, when she was a baby, it's still kind of like this thing, but now she's a person. She's a little person who's growing and teaching me so much.
mm.
Um, so that, yeah, no, the healing process is definitely well underway, and those are some of the issues. I mean, I'm not. Have I touched on your last question,
Oh,
or?
yeah, no, beautifully. I mean, very beautifully. Look, I mean, and I think it takes a lot of courage to share what you've shared here because I think so many men have this pattern where and it's understandable when you see your woman suffering and you see your woman, I don't think that the word desperate is inaccurate. I think it's quite accurate. I know that there tends to be a negative connotation, but I think you and I understand, and the listeners are going to understand. It's not that. It's not, you're not saying that she was desperate or that you were desperate from a negative place. It's just a feeling of desperation. Like this dream means everything to us. And what if this doesn't happen?
Right,
It's an existential crisis in a lot of ways. Yet we treat it as if, oh, just get over it and, go adopt. Not like there's anything wrong with adoption. It's a beautiful thing. But when you go through what so many couples go through on this journey, to like toss it aside like that is just it's disrespectful. So I think what you're sharing here is extremely courageous. So what was it like for you to start watching Karen? So Karen says, this is important to me. I want to do this. I want to work on this piece of the puzzle. I want to work on my mind. Like, what were some of the things that you started to see in her? And did that impact you at all?
yeah, big time. And I would say honestly, it's still impacting me. Um, I'll sort of reverse it, but looking back on that whole time period, especially when she was um, in the weekly coachings, or during that schedule that you all had. Looking back on that period now, I can still get lessons from it. And in fact, even just in preparing for this interview, just in my mind, I've had a lot of very lucid realizations about how it's impacted me. So, one thing I observed was when she would do her coaching sessions with you and the group, I saw her start to adopt, in general, a more positive attitude. Her demeanor and disposition about the process of working on getting pregnant started to change. And of course, that was really nice for me. It's relaxing, and makes you feel good when your partner is doing something that makes them feel good. Also, I saw that the proportion of worry to optimism was starting to decrease, which just like that changed the whole vibe in the house. Um,
I could only imagine what the vibe in the house had been up to that point, John.
well, it was stressful, you know, um, and and it was hard on everyone. It was taxing. Um, I mean, there's stress in life, you know, and raising a family is stressful, but when it's balanced with the blessing of having a family, for me, I feel like, you know, just having a child has made me much more capable of handling that kind of day-to-day stress. But yeah, I mean, to go back to the first part of your question, as I saw her get more optimistic and less worrisome, it was like that rubbed off on me too.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. I think it's interesting because not a lot of women understand the degree of influence that they have. Because whether you realize it or not, you're looking to Karen, this woman that you love. How can I be there for her? How can I support her? And when you see her stressed out, it would be virtually impossible not to take some of that on.
Oh yeah. It would, at least in our case with our relationship, it would be impossible. Yeah, we're so emotionally bonded that it almost wouldn't, in our case, it wouldn't really be a legitimate partnership if those kinds of things didn't affect each other. So, I mean, I definitely was feeling all that in both the good and the bad.
Was there any point, John, when you saw Karen in suffering, was there any time when you're like, "Hey, maybe we shouldn't keep doing this. Like maybe we should stop."
Not really, to be honest. What I remember is that there were times where she might have at least said that she was ready to give up, and I was not ready to give up. And that, I mean, that could have been a big part of why I didn't need too much consideration of whether to support her in working with you. Let me say it in
Mhm.
a simpler way. I felt like a lot of times during that period, I was propping up both of our confidence to keep going. So when she had an opportunity to do something that could be helpful and even transformative, I felt like it was good to keep that support going.
One of the things that I remember so much about Karen is like she was always there. She was always there, ready, committed, willing to do the work, willing to ask questions. And it was really a beautiful sight to see that transformation. Let's fast forward because something really miraculous happened for you guys. I knew what had happened and I knew what you guys had gone through. And I know that there was some trepidation about, doing super invasive things and that you guys had your heart set on calling in your baby in, the most natural way possible. And that's exactly what you did. So I would love it if you would share, like, what was it like when you found out when that Karen was pregnant again?
It felt like a miracle. Yeah, totally. Felt like a miracle. And I can't really say it. It's hard to find any more complicated words to put on it than that.
Oh my gosh. And what was it like? Because, like, as her pregnancy progressed and this reality was becoming more real, what were you experiencing? Like, as you see this beautiful belly and you guys are preparing for your daughter's arrival, I mean, what do you think is the biggest takeaway from that experience?
There's never there's never going to be a better time in terms of the outer circumstances. Now, I know, I mean, that's something you hear all the time because that's advice that I got from so many people, friends, and I had friends who had been like teenage parents with totally unplanned pregnancies earlier in their lives. I had friends who had waited and then gotten pregnant, and everyone was saying the same thing, like, don't wait. And it's not that we were hesitating, but see, there's something in the mind that even if you say you want something, sometimes you're actually putting up the roadblocks that are making you wait for it. And that might sound kind of abstract, but I know people who have gone through your program and people who have experienced it know what I'm talking about. But um, somewhere inside us, we were waiting because it wasn't happening. And so friends would say, what do you wait? There's nothing is going to be more ideal in terms of having kids. And then when we finally got pregnant and we were approaching having this child, I understood the truth in that in a
Mm,
way that I couldn't have before.
that is such a gift, John, and clearly Karen did rub off on you because I mean that's such a level of awareness to understand that there is a cause and effect, not blame, not pointing fingers, but that we throttle our own success. We're the ones that will create this waiting per se. Because I think you're exactly right. And I really love the way that you put that because you can still be doing all the things, but if you're not getting the result, you have to ask, what am I resisting or what am I waiting for? What's this thing? And it's all mental blocks.
Yeah, yeah.
Wow.
And
This is
Roseanne, if you don't mind, I'll just say that one thing that has come to mind for me in getting ready to talk to you today was, and this is a new thought, though it shouldn't have been because I've had access to the wisdom this whole time. But I'm an aspiring entrepreneur who's, let's say, struggled with getting some of my business ideas off the ground due to various resistance and blockages. And some of it's circumstantial, and a lot of it, I can admit that is things in my own mind that I've sort of like put in my own way. And when we were getting ready to talk today, I was thinking, actually, I can employ Roseanne's advice and approach in my own ventures. If I think about my career plans and business ideas as a kind of baby that I want to give birth to.
mm,
So that's a metaphor that just kind of came to me, but I wanted to share it with you.
it's beautiful and it's freaking true, John. I love this because and here's a little side note. Like this is why women who go through these programs and their partners are, obviously influenced by this, but like they go on to write books, they have more babies, they start businesses, they do all these things because you're truly unleashing this other side and this other belief system. I lived it myself, John. How does somebody go from being a sexual assault prosecutor to this? It's like you don't get there by not walking the talk. I'm so happy that this has had such a ripple effect in your family because that's what we're talking about. Women hear me tell them, look, the work you are doing is going to change your family tree, not just because you're adding branches to it or leaves, but because of who you're becoming. You are changing your part of the family tree's belief system about what's possible. Because the truth is, John, like the God's honest truth, you and Karen calling in your daughter is going to make your business a piece of cake. I mean, like by comparison, I mean, you called in a life, this beautiful girl. It isn't easy, but it is simple. And if you brought in this girl, bro, sitting on a gold mine. Did you have male friends around you? I know that you had mentioned, people, that you knew from high school or, but did you have much male community around this subject?
Um, Not a ton, no. I mean, aside from a couple of old friends, and I'm thinking of one in particular, not really. And honestly, around this subject, I mean, what we're talking about today, I don't think I really discussed with anyone at the time, aside from just mentioning what Karen was doing. And then once she
Mm,
got pregnant, mentioning it with a degree of what's the word, like with as a testimonial in a sense to the effectiveness of this kind of mindset training when it's really done well, like how you clearly know how to teach it. But no, not really. I didn't have much of a male network during that period. No.
would that have made a difference, or do you think this was just a subject for you personally? Or is this something that you would have kind of kept to yourself regardless?
That's a good question. Uh, I mean, it's hard to say looking back, but I think I think I had a degree of sort of keeping my cards close to my chest, especially
Mhm.
before our daughter was born. I mean, to use a cliche term, but not wanting to jinx it. I think
Yeah.
I opened up a lot more about it um, later on,
Hmm.
once we were sort of out of the woods, so to speak. At the same time, from my perspective, there's a lack of emotional openness in the masculine world. I've met a lot of men, friends of mine, who have recently gotten involved in men's groups, and I know a lot of them mention that they get a lot of benefit from it, just having a community of men to interact and share with. I can see a lot of benefit of it, and I would totally encourage other men. I mean, if they have someone to talk to, if there's a way to relate this journey to other men, it could be really beneficial. At the same time, I'm not sure how much it would have changed my attitude at the time.
Why don't you share with us, like, is being a girl dad 10,000 times better than you thought it would be?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I have imagined myself as a girl dad for a long time.
Really?
Yeah,
Really? What do you think that was? I think that's so beautiful. Like what is it about that you just felt so drawn to?
well, oh gosh. There's a lot of factors. I mean, there's objective things like I was raised by a single mom. So I grew up in a house where my primary companion was a female. Um, that's an outer example. It could be partly my, creative artistic personality. Um, you know, though I'm also very left-brained at times, but all I can say is that I just want anyone who might be listening, that prayers get answered. And um, it's also really important to keep a strong awareness of what you're praying for, because the old adage, be careful what you wish for, because you just might get it, is totally true. I've seen it in my life. In fact, I've even, like, in the case of what we're talking about, I've seen where prayers from early in my life were answered many years later. And so prayer totally works. And, no matter what kind of background you might be from, even if it's secular, person might be agnostic. I mean, I don't care what your attitude is about spirituality, but when you focus your mind on something, it happens. And so I just remember in my early life when I would imagine myself as a parent, even long before I was married, um, I just thought of myself as a girl dad. I don't know why.
Mm, you just knew. You just
I just
knew.
knew.
Oh my goodness. And when we're done here, you can go squeeze her. That's like the most beautiful thing, John. I just can't express my gratitude enough for you and Karen and your courage, because we can never tell who's watching. And I think, and the reason why I say that is because the courage that each of us is willing to express in the pursuit of our own dreams lays the foundation for others to be inspired by that courage and go for theirs. Because unquestionably, there are men and women that are going to be listening to this all over the world that are going to be moved by your decision to in a clutch moment to really support Karen, and in a moment when you could have gone back to old patterns and you could have leaned into your fear, but you both said yes to a bigger vision. Because people often think, oh, well, this is just yes to a program. No, it's not. I mean, that's like incidental, but what this is about is the both of you deciding you want better than pain and desperation. What you want is the vision, and who you allowed yourselves to become in the process and continue to become years later as your daughter is growing up, as she's communicating with you guys, and you guys are having fun family adventures. Exactly to your point about prayer, it required you to become something different and to receive at another level. And look at where you are today. It's fucking brilliant, John. It's brilliant. So thank you for that, sir. And is there anything in closing, in addition to what you've shared, all the bombs that you've dropped here, like, is there anything that you would want men in particular to know from your experience and being a dad today?
If a man wants to be a parent, and that is a genuine desire that he has in his heart, then it's totally possible, especially when you give that feeling and offer it with your partner as a partnership, and create that as a shared vision, a shared dream. You want your prayers and the prayers of your partner to synchronize, to match your waveforms. You want to get that frequency so that your prayers are in harmony with each other.
Spoken like a master manifester, John. You know the quantum of all of this stuff. It's so good.
Well, thank you. And Roseanne, the biggest thing that I'd like to end with is just to personally thank you, express my gratitude for what you've given us in your support, in your coaching, your teaching, all of it, the service, the wisdom you shared. I'm genuinely, genuinely grateful for that. And so I really appreciate you. You're great. And I'm really happy to know you, and I'm really happy to have had this conversation face to face. So
Mm.
thank you.
You are welcome, John, and I will receive that with the love that it's given. And I send that right back to both of you, because one of the great satisfactions in my professional life is being able to see people not just create the families that they desire, but to go on to use those lessons to create the lives that they truly want. Like that is, it just thrills me. It makes me so happy. And to see you, Karen, embarking on that with your daughter is just, it's a delight. So thank you so much, John.
You're welcome. Thank you.